Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey guys, back again with the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, here to answer your questions. And as always, reach out to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. YouTube comments below or any of my social media. If I don't get back to you immediately, message me again, because sometimes things get lost or sometimes I miss things, and it is a busy time of the year too, so I'm not doing as many videos a week as what I have been doing, just because I'm just trying to catch up and trying to stay afloat in life, as it were, to some degree. So today I've got a great question from Alex. So Alex recently wrote in with the question about making brandy from Muscadine grapes. So here comes the question. So, hey Alan, thank you for the information you provide for all hobby and not so much distillers. I asked your opinion about Muscadine grape brandy on your channel. I would like to know more information based on your experience. My story: I'm originally from Ukraine, and distilling and winemaking runs in my family for generations. Currently, I'm residing in South Carolina. I've been making wine, beer, and distilled beverages for 25 plus years. I can't do it professionally because I don't have a sense of smell. That's hardcore for sure. That does not make distilling easy. It doesn't stop me from fermenting anything with sugar in it. I grow lots of fruit and grapes on my property. Also beekeeping, providing with extra mead and honey-based washes. Based on my relationship with a local distillery, they let me play with their R&D still to make some test batches. My plan is to make local to South Carolina brandy. Everyone told me it can't be done, mostly because it's more work and people are not interested in it. I am only able to grow some Muscadine and Fox or winter grapes native to South Carolina. Winter grapes are extremely small berry, about 0.25 to 0.375 inch in diameter with large pit. Grows mostly wild, and takes lots of them to make a few bottles of wine. Muscadine I grow is mostly Carlos and Noble. I pick them when they reach about 18 bricks, mostly using Red Star Rogue yeast. Distilled first with only 4 shots and some tail cuts. Second distillation goes by small mason jars until I get the 20% ABV coming from a still. All the jars getting blended based on my alcoholic friend's recommendation and goes to a Badmo barrel till I drink it. The rest getting recycled into GNS. By the end of the day, I make drinkable brandy, but I would like to make her replicate something with local history or story. The distillery I work with only have experience with cereal-based alcohol, so no help there. Sorry for a long email. I guess questions to you: what would you do? P.S. I do have some left from last year. I can send it to you for review. I would absolutely love that. It's not the best because it's only one Badmo barrel left. The rest disappeared without proper aging. Fair enough. So this is the interesting thing, is like when a distiller is very passionate about a particular product that there's not necessarily a huge audience for. Now I will tell you this. American brandy is a growing category. And prior to that little hiccup of a pandemic that we had, it was a major category that was growing, especially with on-premise consumption. On-premise being consumption at bars, places of that nature, versus off-premise being at home. The pandemic set that back a little bit, but it'll grow again, just like aquavit will grow again. There is room in the American lexicon for brandy. Now, sometimes if you're in the right place geographically, if you're looking at doing this commercially and you have the right ethnicities around that grew up around brandy, there's a really good market for it. Chicago's a great market, for example, for brandy when it comes to a lot of Eastern Europeans living there, and they really support grape brandy and apple brandy, peach brandy, etc. It's something that they're familiar with. It's something that they know, right? It can be a hard market to get into because brandy is very expensive. So it costs about 10 times as much to make a barrel of brandy as what it does to make a barrel of bourbon. So barrier to entry is much higher. You also have to educate the consumer on how to use brandy and what brandy is, how it's made, why it's made that way, where it comes from, etc. Now, what you have that's unique to you is that you do have Muscat grapes that are basically native to that South Carolina area. And so people know what Muscat grape is, and it's something that you could educate them on, right? And you can educate them, as far as the way the brandy's supposed to taste. They probably had, various Muscat jellies, jams, stuff like that. Those can be compared to the brandy, and people can start to see that difference. Or they may have had Muscat wines. I know there are a few wineries out there that are usually using Muscat in their wines. Muscat is typically a very highly flavorful grape. It should make a great brandy. As I said, I only experimented with it one time. That was the Isons. It's a big purple hardy Muscat that we can get to grow here in southern Indiana that some friends of mine have. And truly it wasn't a straight up brandy because I did chaptalize it with sugar, and I did, as I think I mentioned in the video, I did rectify it up to 170 proof. So it was more like either like a light brandy or maybe even like headed towards a grape vodka. But I really enjoyed it. I would suspect this would just, here's the protocol I would look at initially. The first thing I would do is I would research into South Carolina history and find out if there were ever any brandy distillers there. And I guarantee you there were brandy distillers there, and I guarantee you that they were also using Muscat. There's almost no way they weren't. That's the thing about, you know, pre-prohibition distilleries, and especially pre-1862 distilleries prior to the excise tax. They were basically using whatever they had on hand, whatever they had an abundance of every year, and it might change from year to year. There really were no set mash bills or processes or anything like that, regardless of what marketing teams tell you. It didn't really work that way at that time. So I would establish that as a baseline and look at what those guys did. See if you can find any historic protocols that sort of fall into that. But otherwise, here's what I would do. I would take a very European-American approach to this. So European in the fact that you're going to do double pot still distillation, and American in the fact that instead of putting emphasis on the minerality of the grape, you're going to put the emphasis on the fresh fruit flavors of the grape. So my suggestion would be to look at, first of all, I would not use red Muscats any more than you have to unless you're going to ferment that off the skin, which would kind of be a pain in the ass with Muscat considering how thick the skin is, and I bet it's pretty hard to separate from the flesh when you press it. The reason I say that is because you can extract a lot of tannins from the skins. Now those red Muscat types would be great for like what I did, like the higher proof, the 170 light brandy slash, you know, grape based vodka sort of thing. I would focus more on the bronzes, the whites, yellows, those sorts of things. Ferment them on the skin, get all that great flavor out of them. I would use a yeast probably in the 67 degree range, more like an OK yeast, an EC 1118, Vin 1113. Or Vin 13, sorry. One of those various different brandy and or wine yeast that's going to be really good at pulling out all those flavors, all those fruity flavors. I would probably pick a little bit on the underripe side and at a little slightly higher pH, somewhat like Catawba or even Muscat, or sorry, I keep saying Muscat. You're talking about Muscadines. We're talking about Muscadines here. I'm sorry, not Muscat. I apologize for that. So, but I would treat the Muscadines much more like a Muscat. So maybe pick them at a lower, or to where they're not completely ripe yet. Pick them at a slightly higher pH, maybe in the like 3.9 to 4.1 range, to where you can really pull that phenolic flavor to the forefront, make that part of the aroma in particular. I would ferment those and try to aim for a finished pH of like 3.2 or so by the time the fermentation is done, and then I'd do a stripping run. And when I say stripping run, I mean collect everything off of it. Go all the way down to 20 proof before you cut the still off. Then I would do the doubling run, and I would do a very thorough heads cut. I would collect my hearts. I would take that down to the tails and collect a little bit of tails, not much, into the hearts before I barreled it, if I was going to barrel it. If I were going to barrel it and I were you, what I would do is I'd focus on two things. I'd focus on a very light char barrel, like a 1 char with medium plus toast heads, or a straight up toasted barrel, maybe a medium plus toast all the way around. I might even focus a little bit more on French oak or something of that nature, something a little spicy anyways, because Muscadine is going to already have a lot of like big, bold, heavy character to it, but I think that giving it that much more backbone with some of that French oak, some of that spicy French oak would really work and kind of hint it much more towards like a rye whiskey sort of base that could certainly get some attention from some drinkers out there for sure. I would collect my tails, but I would also collect sweet water. I'd go down to below 20 proof and I'd collect until about 15 proof separately from your tails and have that as sweet water and use that when I was proofing down to go into the barrel. If not, setting it aside and using it to proof down when you come back out of the barrel so you have that much more flavor. I would recycle the tails into every single doubling run that you do, and I would discard the heads 100% from everything. I wouldn't even use them for GNS. I would just get rid of them. I think that you have the possibility there of using Muscadines to make a really high-end quality American brandy using traditional European methodology that really presents something interesting, cool, and unique from the East Coast. Now, you're going to have to educate consumers on that for sure. You're going to have to talk to them about what American brandy is, why it's different from cognac and Armagnac and Calvados and all those sort of things, and why it is so specific to your region, what the flavor is there, and how that's tied to the culinary traditions of that region. That would kind of be the way that I would approach it. I really do want to try this this brandy though, and I will reach out to you and get you my address so I can get a hold of it. Thanks for this question. It was a great question. I'm sorry I kept saying Muscat instead of Muscadine, but I was thinking in my head, what would I compare it to? So Muscadine for me, the closest thing would be Muscat or Catawba. Something phenolic, something that's got some funky, foxy, weird character to it. Also, these winter grapes you talked about, I'm presuming you're talking about something like fox grapes. We have those here in southern Indiana. They come on in the late fall, little bitty things with a great big pit like you mentioned. So one thing that I've used those for in the past, this could be interesting in a brandy, but I've never tried it. I used to make a simple country wine, a white wine, using Welch's white grapefruit juice. But what I would do to that is I would take a handful or two per gallon of the Welch's white grapefruit juice when I fermented it, and I would throw a handful or two per gallon of the fox grapes into that and make like a rosé. Those fox grapes are very strongly charactered, and I suspect that they'd come across pretty heavy in distillation, but they'd be in there in such a small amount that you shouldn't be extracting crazy amounts of tannin from them. Now, when I did the muscadines that I did, the Isons, the big purple ones, I did not press them. It was whole fruit. And I shouldn't necessarily say that just being double pot distilled that it might be too tannic. I know that Concord can do that, and Concord can also go like super great bubble gum, which is fucking nasty. If you're out there thinking about fermenting Concord and making brandy out of it, do yourself a favor and don't fucking do it unless you like double bubble chewing gum, because that's what you're gonna fucking get, and it's not worthwhile at all. But I don't remember getting any of that tannic stuff off of the Ison's Muscadine, so you may be able to even ferment on the skins with the dark purple Muscadines as well. All food for thought, guys. Appreciate it. Love y'all. Later.